and welcome to Standing on the Edge with DJ Randy on BFAM 109.6. Today is Thursday, September 16th. I had to think of what day it was. And today we will talk about the rules are always changing on the edge of the coin. We also have the topic of why be average during Think Like the Rich. And today's personal story will be the hardest parts about owning your own business, part 3. Finally, we're going to finish off the show with what would happen if. If you would like to be a future guest here on the show, then whether it's to promote your business or your side hustle, straighten up a little bit of this light here. Just send me an email at joinmeattheedge@gmail.com, or you can telephone the station at 678-383-4378 with your topic so we can get you on the show. Today's going to be a little bit different, a little bit short, and we'll be doing things differently. Well, basically there. Dave is out at the moment. He is at a Braves game and is enjoying it, hopefully not getting rained out at the game itself. And so I will be doing this broadcasting from my home studio, and going ahead and putting it on the air later on. And of course, those of you on Facebook Live, you will be able to see me straight off the bat as well, but you'll catch it several different ways. I want to say Happy Yom Kippur to all my Jewish friends that are out there. For those of you that are not Jewish, Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement, and this is one of the beginning of the highest holy weeks of all time in the Jewish religion. And it basically just means that this is the day where they would normally go to the high priest and ask for forgiveness for every single sin that they have done or rule that they've broken over the past year, and it all gets then there's an actual sacrifice, and things get turned around, and they start over a brand new leaf. It's kind of like having your New Year's goals all set up in one. You're starting all over again here on today. All right, we're going to go ahead and get into the show. One second here. The Edge of the Coin is brought to you by the CS Media Group. We provide the outstanding talent, and you get the extraordinary entertainment. The Edge of the Coin is a segment that will show a way of opening up our mindsets to allow us to explore both sides of any situation. We're going to jump right into today's topic, which are the rules are always changing. The rules are always changing. And this is so true in everything. I mean, literally. Think about it. How often do you get to go to work? Do you get to drive? Do you get to go out on a date to go see even the same movie more than once? And things are exactly as they were every single time. It just doesn't happen. I mean, let's take that movie example for a second. Let's say you go to the movie theater one more time, assuming that the theaters are open, and some of them are slowly coming out again. But you go to the theater, and if the last time you saw a movie was in 2019, pre-COVID, and you saw the movie that came out and it was literally packed for 6 weeks, every time you went to the theater, you couldn't get into the show without having to squeeze your way in and sit yourself down and make sure you're holding your popcorn and your drink all together at the same time. You couldn't really spread out or do anything like that. You go to any general movie theater right now, and there's at least half the room that's empty. You've got twice as much space as you did before all around you, or more, to go ahead and watch your movie. Rules are always changing. Things are going on from day to day here in Georgia, and of course in the United States. We have this mask mandate thing that's going on as well. The government can't decide, yes, we need the mask, no, we don't need the mask, yes, we need the mask, no, we don't need the mask. The masks are great, the masks are horrible. Personally, I think the masks are what they are. They are masks. And if you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't want to wear a mask, don't wear a mask. It's not going to make that big of a difference one way or another. The biggest reason for the masks is so that when doctors are performing surgery, they won't go ahead and get the germs that might be in their body, good, bad, and otherwise, and transfer them into the open wound that they are working on. That's the biggest reason for it right there. It has nothing to do with whether or not I pass on my germs to you in a normal fashion, because that's all going to depend on your immune system. your health, your immune system, and the strength of it itself. And it's got to go, for me to pass on any germs that I've got, you've got to go through like 16 different defenses just in your nose and your head and mouth, or throat, excuse me, to be able to go ahead and get into your lungs to begin with. That's a lot of system to try to go ahead and go through, and things are punching and pounding and attacking them all at the same time. And 99.99% of the stuff is eliminated right there in your nose. The masks really do not make that big of a difference. I can't tell you that enough. But we're moving on. The rules are always changing. And people say that all the time. I can't get a fix on what's going on. I can't, they won't let me do my job properly. They won't let me run my business properly. I got my customers and they're constantly telling me different things, and they're constantly changing their minds, and they're constantly bringing things back, and yada, yada, yada. Listen, the rules always changing is basically an excuse, okay? It's an excuse to not get things done or to whine about it. Plain and simple. Because every day, every day the rules are changing. Every day your body is different. Your body handles stress differently. Your job changes. Your work changes. It might be raining. It might be sunny outside. It might be snowing. It might be mudsliding. You might have a great big wildfire that you're walking into without realizing it. I mean, it could be just about anything. People go through earthquakes in a lot of parts of our country and all over the world as well. Volcanoes, you name it. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that are constantly intruding upon us that we have to figure out. We have to go through it. We have to learn from it. We have to go ahead and make things work. So how do you take care of this? What do you do about it? If the rules are always changing, then find something that's going to be flexible enough to change with the rules. That sounds pretty easy to me, doesn't it? It's not necessarily easy, but it's simple for sure. It is simple. It's a problem that all business owners have to go through. It's a problem that all churches have to go through. It's a problem that everybody wanting a date to begin with has to go through. It's a problem that everybody with long hair has to go through. I mean, heck, you don't think my hair looks this beautiful every day, do you? A lot of times it's stuck up to the wazoo or moved around or kind of curled over in my face or whatnot, and I got to treat it and brush it and take all the knots out of it and all kinds of stuff. And heck, I mean, it used to be that I didn't have this gray streak in my hair. I used to have nice, really long, dark brown hair, but well, it is what it is. Things change constantly. You've got to either change with them or get stuck in a place where you're not going to be able to make a difference in any way. And that's the biggest thing I want to talk about today, the other side of the coin. Because if the rules are always changing, you've got to be flexible enough to be able to roll with the punches, to be able to go ahead and make things work even if the rules change. Now, let's go ahead and take, for example, this pipeline not so dream that I'm hearing about so many times from so many different people, and that's that our country is very quickly going to go ahead and turn into a cashless society. Now, I've been talking about this for a couple of years. Did a little over a year and a half on this show, but definitely a couple of years outside of that or more. And what's happening is they are trying desperately to go ahead and get rid of all the cash in our society. They learned from India. They didn't want to go ahead and do it overnight, basically give people, 12 hours worth of notice to switch out all their cash before it became worthless. But they definitely want to go ahead and try to get it where there's no cash whatsoever. So first thing they did during the pandemic, they automatically went closed down the banks, and then they put up a post note. They put up a note to all of the banks so that the moment they went open, there was quote unquote a coin shortage. Coin shortage. There's no coin shortage. There's no cash shortage. What's a shortage of is the people trying to get it out and about and moving around. And every time there is some sort of calamity, every time there is a holiday, every time there was a robbery, something that came up, there was always a quote unquote a shortage somewhere, which was of course not true. But now the government is finding out that if there is no cash in the system, then they can control people so much easier. So much easier. I mean, so much to the point to where they can tell you and make you basically shop at certain stores. They can make you get gasoline from certain gas stations. They can make sure that you are paying your bills or not paying your bills by giving you the money themselves straight off the bat. They can make sure that if you're not doing what you want, what they want you to do, they can hold your assets and freeze your assets. They do this constantly. They've been doing this for decades. How do you think these countries get their assets frozen? It's not because they have their assets that are literally in wood and coal and oil and gold and everything else that goes along with it, stored in a financial vault here in the United States. No, what happens is they went into the World Bank as digital assets, and they've been doing that for years and decades. So when they freeze a country's assets, that's basically what they're saying is they're taking the World Bank and they're going to place beep on hold, access denied, nobody can get into that. And so 75% of what they had overall, I'm just bringing that up because I don't know if that's true or not, but whatever they happen to have stored in the World Bank as their reserve, so to speak, is now unaccessible or inaccessible to that particular country. And so they have to rely only on what's in house, so to speak, in their own country. That's how the government does that. They're not stupid. They're really not. They go ahead and figure out these wonderful ways to go ahead and try to control as many people as they possibly can, and then they go ahead and put it forth in terms of this is going to be so much more helpful. It's going to help us catch the criminals because, quote unquote, only criminals use cash. And it's going to help us catch the drug dealers because, quote unquote, only drug dealers use cash. Well, I got news for you folks. It's not going to happen. Okay. You're going to be able to control a lot more people, but you're not going to be able to control everybody. And my guesstimate, my prediction, so to speak, is basically this: that next year, when everybody goes, or when the United States at least goes cashless, as I'm expecting it to, and like I said, what I understand is that come basically the sometime second or third week in January, this is going to happen. It might happen before then, I don't know, but right about then, they're going to hit the button and say, "Okay, guys, no more cash. That's it," and we go from there. Well, at that point, things are going to go ahead and jar again, jar to a screeching halt for a lot of reasons. And they're going to go ahead and lurch forward and stop back and lurch forward and stop back. It's kind of like my daughter who was trying to go ahead and learn how to drive a stick shift the first time. And you know what I'm talking about if you've ever done that. You pop off the clutch a little bit too much and you jerk forward and you stall the engine out. You put it back in again and you can't decide whether to go or stop or whether to go or stop or go or stop. And you're just jerking and stopping and jerking and it's one of those things. And that's how I think the economy is going to happen here in the United States and by extension all over the world because of this. Because if the US dollar goes on currency, digital currency only, it's not just here in this country, it's all over the world. And things are really going to be doing fits here and there all over the place while with, basically gymnastics that are going to be happening. Now, here's the other part of that is that the people that are used to using cash, they don't want to use a bank account. They don't have a bank account. They don't want to go ahead and be beholden to the government for this. They're going to find different ways to get around it. This has always been the case. The problem here is that they're now going to be labeled as criminals. They're going to be labeled as drug dealers. They're going to be labeled as terrorists because they're not conforming to the system. And I don't know about you, but I don't like conforming to one system. I love having options. And I don't want to go ahead and have my country say, you can't live here unless you follow these these special rules that you've never had to follow before. Now, if I was moving to Russia, if I was moving to Venezuela, if I was moving to Brazil, if I was moving even to Mexico, I would then have to follow their rules that I was not used to following because they are already in place. But if I'm in my own country and I've got my own land and I can grow my own food and I can make my own soap and I can go ahead and utilize the natural resources that I've got in my yard, in my land, and I have a business where I can go ahead and broadcast to you fine folks as to what's going on and be able to make money doing it. I should not have to be made to go completely cashless unless I choose to do so. It should be my choice, not the government telling me that I have to go cashless, otherwise I will be labeled as a criminal. That is my soapbox right there. So basically, it's going to come down to this. You've got pretty much a little less than 6 months. No, I'm sorry, a year and 6 months. A year and 6 months, because 2023 is when they're supposed to be doing this. And by that point, if you are not willing and ready to go ahead and make the plunge and you don't have a backup plan for yourself, you're going to be at their mercy or you're going to be labeled a criminal. I want you to remember that. You are listening to Standing on the Edge. When we come back, it's time to think like the rich here on BFAM 109.6. Welcome back to the show. Think Like the Rich is brought to you by Hers Decadence, offering luxurious refreshment for your body inside and out. You need to treat your body and that of your lover to a bit of luxury from hers. And you can find out what's available by emailing Heather at hersdecadence@gmail.com. Think Like the Rich is a segment designed to help everyone think past their circumstances and encourage a different course of action. Today's topic is why be average? That's a very good question. Why be average? Why should we be average? It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, if you are, oh, I don't know, let's say breathing, you don't want to be average. You don't want to be like everybody else unless you are in pretty much in high school. you know and then it's just like I just want to fit in. I want to do what I can do. I don't want anybody to see me. I don't want to stand out from the crowd, so on and so forth. And I mean, as much of the dreams we got about hanging out with the cool kids, that's pretty much most of high school right there. You just want to be able to fit in enough, to blend in enough, to know where nobody's going to bother you at all, not one bit. But think about it the rest of the way. If you're in middle school, if you're in college, if you are in I don't know, life at any point outside of the high school standings right there, you want to stand out. You want to go ahead and live a life of purpose. You want to have something that's really going to make you feel great doing it. And doing it doesn't necessarily mean sitting back and just playing video games the whole time. Of course, there is their own thing for them. People make great money doing that as well at the same time. But the interesting thing is that I came across an article the other day. It said average homes for average workers. Well, if I have to live in a home that looks like every other home around it, and I've got to have a job like everybody else that lives in it to go ahead and afford that average home, why? Why would I want that? I mean, okay, I might like the house because it looks really good. It's just the right size. It's just the right color. It's in a great neighborhood where it's at. There's all these other things here. But I don't want to go ahead and have to drive up the street 2 or 3 times for the first couple of days till I figure out which house is mine. I want it to stand out to me. I want to be able to know which one is which. So what happens? One of the first things we do is we go ahead and change something about it so we know that it's different from the others. Some people stick pink flamingos in their yard. Can't tell you why, they just do it. Some people will go ahead and paint the mailboxes. Some people will go ahead and replace the door and make it a different color. Some people will go ahead and paint the house itself. Who knows? I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that you can go ahead and do to allow you to be not average or better than average, so to speak, and stand out from the crowd. So it's just that much different to where you will know what's yours and nobody else has to worry about figuring out what's not theirs. If you just blend in, it's boring. It really is. It is boring. I have tried this. I have tried so many times, I cannot tell you. There would be I would be on the ship. I would be on there for 6 months at a time. By the fourth, fifth, sixth month that came around, I'm going, man, I am really, really tired. I just want to go home. I want to go to sleep. I want to do nothing for a year and just sit around and have nobody have to call on me and have nobody to go ahead and say, hey, get up. You need to go ahead and do this. Hey, you're late. You got to run and get up to where you need to go. You got to be at work, so on and so forth. I just want to go ahead and do nothing and just blend in with the crowd. And then I'd get off the ship and I'd lay around for 3 days and go, okay, I'm bored. I'm really bored. I need to go about doing something. And so I would just jump up and figure out, oh, what are we going to do? Let's run off to Spain. Boom. And 3 days later, I'm off to Spain and I'm staying there for 4, 5, 6 months or so on and so forth. It's not quite that drastic, not quite that far most of the time. It's usually, oh, you know what? I want to get out and do something. I'm going to take a day trip. I'm going to run up to Alabama and eat lunch or something like that. Or I'm going to go visit my sister-in-law up in Boston, and maybe just go ahead and take the day after that, drive up to Maine and possibly eat dinner up in Canada, and then come on back again later that night. Since it's only a few hours drive, I might do something like that on a whim, but if it's something really drastic like going to Czechoslovakia or Spain or some other country that goes along that, it requires a little bit of planning. I can't just go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to go and throw my clothes on and we're going to go ahead and go. It just doesn't work that way, and certainly not anymore. But here's the big thing, getting back to being average. If I was to be average, then I would be constantly spinning my wheels and doing all these great things for myself that nobody else cared about. And while I don't care that they don't care, I know that sounds weird, but while it really doesn't concern me that they don't care about it, I still want to be able to have them make use of it, for it to be useful for not just them, but for a bunch of other people at the same time. There is so much that I have that sparks out of my head on a regular basis. I mean, I know I constantly amaze my wife and my daughters with just what's coming up and the ideas that are popping out as it goes on. Sometimes, literally, I can't go to sleep because things are happening at such a rapid pace. I mean, I was thinking just the other night about this dream that I've had for years about going off, buying a small piece of land, building up a house on it, by myself, little by little by little as I went along, and making it look like different things as it went along. And I could go ahead and do this, and I could add that, and I could take care of this. And I spent an hour and a half just planning out my dream house, basically, the other night at 3 o'clock in the morning instead of sleeping like I should have. It just happens. But if I was average and I went, you know what? I just want a small house. I really don't care what it looks like. And for that matter, it doesn't really matter where it's at. I think I'll just go into the city. I'll go ahead and buy myself an apartment. And that way I'm in one big house. I don't have to worry about the outside. I don't have to worry about mowing the lawn. I don't have to worry about doing everything else. I'll just go ahead and live in my one little tiny box that I've got right there inside. And, I'll have a little window. I can go ahead and look out to the city and have a nice little skyline view and so on and so forth. And it's living in the city. I love it. I really do. I would love to go ahead and have a place in the city also. Again, but it's not quite the same thing because, again, you're sort of forced into that little cubby right there where you've only got a little bit of space and you're confined and have to do what you have to do. Okay, that might be great. That might not be great. It works in certain situations. I certainly wouldn't want to live there day after day after day after day after day after day after day for years and years and years to come and really get stale and cramped and crowded and yuck. There's just too many things. I've got to be able to be different. I cannot be average. Now, that being said, there's a place for being average, okay? I mean, there's so many people out there that don't know, first of all, that they have options, plain and simple, okay? I mean, they don't know that they have options. Think about this one great quote, okay? Way back when in the early 1900s, and the Model A, I think is what it was that was coming out, Model T, something like that, was one of the early Fords that were coming out. And they were not production people, the salespeople that were going on. They didn't really have showrooms at that point, but the salespeople came in, and one of the ways they advertised it was you can have any color you want as long as it's black. You can have any color you want as long as it's black. And that's how they went ahead and sold it. And people were buying it. I mean, they were really buying it. It didn't matter to them if it was black or not. It was the fact that they had mobility and they were able to go ahead and move around when they wanted to. And they didn't have to worry about saddling up the horse. And they didn't have to worry about trying to go ahead and getting the horse fed and trying to make sure the horse didn't wander off the trail or anything else like that. And they didn't have to wait for the stagecoach to come up. And they didn't have to wait for the train to come along or so on and so forth. I mean, they had mobility pretty much right then. All they had to do was go outside, turn a crank, get moving. That was really about it. Of course, you had to learn how to drive it, and you had bumpy roads and no shocks whatsoever, so you're bouncing around every which way. But even so, it was just the fact that they had an option to be able to do something at that point. Now let's fast forward, a couple of decades from there, and all of a sudden you've got red cars, and you've got black cars, and you've got blue cars. And it's just moving on, and you got actually more choices, and you got a whole color scheme moving on, and it's just wonderful how that actually worked out for itself. It was really, really good. So now we fast forward today, and we're trying to go ahead and learn somehow, some point, if you're over the age of 14, that you've got to go ahead and prepare for your future. And you can't do it the same way that your mom and dad did it. You can't do it the same way that your grandparents did it. You definitely can't do it the same way your great grandparents did it, because it just doesn't work anymore. The rules have changed. I mean, it used to be where you could go ahead and get yourself a decent job. You didn't even have to have a good job, but you could have a decent job making a total of like $3.50 an hour. Do you remember that? $3.50 as the minimum wage or less? I certainly do. $3.50 an hour, and if you worked long enough, you could save up a decent amount of money to go ahead and purchase a brand new car for only $3,000, which was fantastic. And if you saved up long enough, even working $3.50 an hour, you could go ahead and get yourself your own starter home. It was a two-bedroom home. It had a nice little kitchen in it, had a stove in it. You might have had to put a refrigerator in it, but either way, it came with these things. You had one bathroom you could go ahead and use. And it was, like I said, a starter home. And all you had to do was pay less than $10,000 for it, unless you wanted something bigger. $10,000. Can you imagine that? And even back at the beginning of last century, you could still order from Sears and Roebuck, going through their catalog. You could order your own prefabricated house to put together yourself for $25. $25. Incredible. And now we've got all kinds of things you can go ahead and do, but you can't go ahead and save your way into something like that. You can't. The the median home, meaning that not the middle of the line, but pretty much the average home that goes out, and that takes everything all together, from the richest houses to the poorest houses and everything in between, and jumbling it all up and adding it all up together and then going ahead and splitting it. That's where they come up with this. And they say that right now in the United States, the median home is right around $250,000 to $300,000. Now, that puts most people's frame of mind into this, that if they want a small home, they're going to have to go ahead and pay around $125,000 to $150,000. That's a heck of a lot of money. A heck of a lot of money. And if you think about it, even if you got great wage, a great wage today, and you were making between $15 and $20 an hour at your job, you would still have to work and work hard and slave and really go ahead and save up as much money as you possibly can for nearly 20 years to be able to purchase that house. And if you wanted to go ahead and just put it on a mortgage, then you might be able to get away with going ahead and putting down as little as 300, sorry, as little as $3,000, but it's definitely 3% of what the actual house price is. So we're talking a lot of times $10,000 to $15,000. You're still having to save a lot of money to be able to get into that. Just to be average. Just to be average. I think I would have liked to go ahead and find a way to work with the government and get the rules changed back into my favor for my circumstances and say, hey, I don't care if I pay you a little extra taxes, just let me build this way safely and soundly on this land. You can come check it out and go from there. And I can't see that they would have any issues whatsoever with that. But no, the rules have changed. You got to go ahead and follow what they say and do what they do and take care of things as they take care of it. Don't know why. It just is what it is. So that being the case, my point, my advice to you is don't be average. Don't be average. Find something that's going to go ahead and make you stand out, even if it's just that little bit. Yes, there is a much better chance of getting noticed for standing out, but at the same time, if you have a group of people that previously all looked the same, and every one of them did something slightly different and stood out from the other, all of a sudden there's a lot of commotion going on to the eye where the eye will take it in, but they can't go ahead and distinguish who's doing what because everybody is different. So, if that's the case, get yourself a crowd. Everybody be different and have yourself a great time. You are listening to Standing on the Edge. When we come back, it's time for Tales from the Edge here on BFAM 109.6. And welcome back to the show. Tales from the Edge is brought to you by the HRS Foundation, investing in future generations to ensure a better tomorrow. Tales from the Edge is a shared personal example of people and situations that I've experienced during my path to growing wealthy. And today's story is about the hardest part about owning your own business, part 3, also known as Don't Stop Now. Don't Stop Now. That almost sounds like a Journey song. But the whole reason that I'm bringing this up is because of this. There are so many times, I can't tell you that I have personally done this. And I consider myself a serial entrepreneur. Okay, I have taken and probably gone ahead and started somewhere close to 50 businesses and buried most of them within a few weeks to a few months' time. Why? For many different reasons. It could be that I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I wasn't doing. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't have enough money. I didn't have enough experience. I didn't have enough of the right kind of people. I wasn't selling what people wanted to go ahead and purchase. I wasn't doing all these other things. I was just thinking with the top of my head the one thing: I gotta get away from my job. I gotta get out of this place. I gotta do something else. I've got to be something other than average. And so many times I would say to myself, this is great. I'm starting off. I'm jumping into it. Boom. And I was into it full force. And my wife would look at me and go, again? And I'd say, yep, again. That's me. And I would get about, oh, I don't know, a week, a month, 2 months, 6 months in, something like that. And again, it would start being boring. It would start being just ho hum. It would start being just, yeah, whatever. Let me see what I can do about this to make it better. Ooh, there's something nice and simple, or there's something nice and exciting over there. Let's run to go ahead and do that. And I'd start something else and would put the first thing on hold or just bury it and say, forget it, it's not working, I'm not doing it anymore. It was just one of those things that would be that way. So The hardest thing about owning your own business when it comes to actually doing something is not the starting it. The starting it is simple. The starting it is easy. The starting of the business is great and it's wonderful and it's exciting and it's got all these different flavors and it makes your taste buds dance and sing, as they used to say back in one of the movies that I remember. Um, but then after a while, you lose that excitement. You lose that panache. You lose that wonder, that wonderful feeling that comes along, and you get to thinking, it's not really doing me any good or doing anything. And you've got to remember that you can't stop, which brings me to the reason that you started the business in the first place. Like I said, many times the hardest part about me owning a business was not the starting of the business or even what business to start. It was the fact that I was coming at it from the wrong angle. I was coming at it from a different direction than I should have, and I was having to beat my head to go through a wall because I couldn't get to 3 steps to my left where the doorway was to walk through the doorway. And again, the reason I said that is, or reason I was doing that is because I was saying to myself, I've got to do something to get out of my job. My whole purpose for having my own business was to get out of a job. And what did I do? I would start off with building another job. But this time it was a job that I created. It was a job that I was doing. It was a job that I was, wearing myself out on. And I was spinning my wheels on. And I really didn't know what was going on. And it was draining. It was dragging. It was everything that I had to do that my other previous jobs had and allowed or did not allow me to go ahead and do. But now I had to pay extra taxes doing it. So if you have a small business, just remember that there's a lot of times that your business is just a job that you've created for yourself. So it makes it that much more difficult because now you can't just say, I quit, I'm over, I'm done with it, unless you go ahead and throw the towel in for the business. So don't stop now. You have to very quickly get past that stage where it's just you in your business as the business owner and as the CEO and as the accountant and as the marketer and as the salesperson and as the manufacturer and as the supplier and I mean everything else that goes along with it in your small business. And you've got to be able to go ahead and find yourself a second person, a third person, a fourth person. You've got to grow your business. And if the first question out of your mind is, I can't afford to pay me, how am I going to afford paying somebody else? Think of it this way. If you've got somebody doing what you do, let me take my example right here as a DJ, okay? My business on a regular basis, everywhere I go, is to go to an event, to set up a table, unless it's already provided for me, to set up my speakers, to set up my sound system and computer, and go ahead and play the music that I do or play for a couple of hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, however long the set might be in doing so. And then I go ahead and break the system down and I go ahead and put it away and I drive back again. Now that is my general job, so to speak. That's my business that I do. If I were to find somebody that could do the same thing and I could teach them how to do it, then I could go ahead and take the rest of my time that I'm not working on a job and find another job to go ahead and send this DJ out. And I would go ahead and pay him a little bit less than I was getting paid, and I would collect some of that. And then if I had a third DJ to go ahead and come in, and I taught them how to go ahead and do the exact same thing, and they went out and I could go ahead and find jobs, and they're doing whatever they do, and I could go ahead and do what I do at the same time. Now I've got 3 times the amount of income coming in, and I'm keeping about 80% of it, 75% of it, and the rest of it's going out to my other DJs. They're happy because they're getting paid. I'm happy because I'm making extra money, and the business is growing, and it takes on a life of its own, and it becomes exciting again. It becomes wonderful again. It becomes all these other things rather than just I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. And then If you go ahead and take the other parts of your business, the harder parts that you're just not used to doing or don't like to do, such as finding the people to get the business to come from. If you're scheduling people and you don't like schedule, hire somebody to schedule. I mean, if you pay them $10 an hour and you have them work 1 day a month, 1 day a month, doing the schedule for that next month, they're making an extra $10 right there, maybe an extra $20 right there, and it's a relief that you don't have to do. Then if you can go ahead and get a good accountant, and they're going to say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and charge $100 at the end of the year to go ahead and do your tax payments. And of course, it might be more, it might be less, depends on what you're doing. And but we'll go ahead and make sure you get as much money as you possibly can. That saves you from having to do the same thing. If you've got somebody out there and you're hiring them as a bookkeeper, and they're going ahead and taking all of your receipts and they're entering it in the computer, and once again they're working 1 day a month and they're taking all your receipts and all your stuff like that, and they work for 2 hours and you spend $20 on that, guess what? You just saved so much time that you could have been doing something else and adding that 1 hour toward your next gig or toward your next scheduling session or trying to go ahead and sell something else rather than going, I got to enter this in the computer. I got to take care of this. And it's a relief to be able to do that. And all of a sudden, before you know it, you've got 5 people working with you. You've got yourself the two DJs, the accountant, the bookkeeper, and then yourself as the CEO. Your business is 5 people. You've grown, and now you're having to go ahead and think of new ways to go ahead and expand your business even further. The money will come. Only you can do so much before you get completely wiped out, before you get tired, before everything else that comes along says, there's no way I can do it any more than this. I can't. I'm so exhausted. It's just not going to happen. And then, heaven forbid, you want to go ahead and take a vacation, because now, once again, you got to shut everything down for however long it is and say, okay, I'm getting out of there and I'm moving on. There's always different ways about it. But it goes back to number one, not being average. You've got to stand out some way to be able to do it. But number two, you can't stop when you're getting tired. If you're really getting tired, find somebody else to help you. Find a way to get it taken care of, and you will be motivated very quickly. I can almost guarantee you, unless you're just super lazy, you're going to be motivated to find a way to go ahead and make the extra 10, 20, $30 that you need to pay that person in addition to yourself as well, without taking money away from you or a lot of money taking away from you, but it will go ahead and expand your business exponentially as you go along. Every business is supposed to do that, and that's the best way to go ahead and grow a business anyway, because it's growing organically rather than getting out there and trying to hire 50, 100, 500 people all at once, and then setting up your payroll immediately and you've got nothing to sell. And there are businesses that do that. That's not a very good business model, in my opinion, but it works, and some people do that. They have a great job to go ahead and do it. And they have the funds to be able to allow that to happen too, until they can go ahead and get the process rolling and move on from there. So if that's how you do it, great. If not, my suggestion is just get out there, start it, but don't stop now. And speaking of that, one of the best lines that I have ever heard when it came to this was, you would be really, really exhausted. You'd be really tired. You'd be frustrated. You'd be finding out, I'm broke. I don't have the money to pay the bills. I got to deal with the government. I got to do all this other thing. And the best line that I've ever heard for that is, you can always quit. So why quit now? You can always quit. So why quit now? If you really, really, really have a business and you really have something that people want, and you know they want it and they're willing to pay you for it, and you're frustrated, why quit? Just find a different way to be able to switch that around so that you are no longer the only one doing it. Find a way to move things around to where somebody else is doing something else. Even if, let's go back to my DJ business, even if I hired a roadie if I hired somebody to go ahead and take my equipment and set up the physical equipment. They set up the speaker stands, they set up the speaker, they set up the table, they set up the computers and put it out to where I could go ahead and get it connected. And I went ahead and connected, and they sat down and I said, okay, great, I'm going to pay you $20 just to do that, to work for 30 minutes to begin with, 30 minutes at the end. That's $30 for that 1 hour. The rest of the time you can do whatever you want. You can dance, you can schmooze, you can do something else, as long as you go ahead and make sure you're appropriate for the setting that you're in while you're doing that. And they're happy. They're making a little extra money. They got next to no work to go ahead and do it, and you're happy because you don't have to do all that setup and lugging around and do whatever, something like that. And you might be making $30 less than you were to begin with, but the stress on your body is incredible because you don't have it. It's absolutely amazing. You can always quit, so why quit now? AKA, don't stop now, and you'll find your business continuing to grow. You are listening to Standing on the Edge. When we come back, it's time to close out the show with What Would Happen If, here on BFAM 109.6. And welcome back to the show. What Would Happen If is brought to you by DJR Entertainment. Do you have a Halloween party that needs to be extraordinary? Then telephone 470-554-2134 to schedule the perfect DJ guaranteed to be the life of your next party. Today's topic for What Would Happen is I'm tired of adulting. Now, I've done something similar to this in the past that says I'm tired of being sick and tired. But today is I'm tired of adulting. What does it mean to be adulting? That basically what happens this year, I can boil it down to one word: responsibility. Responsibility. And so many people don't want responsibility. And the weird thing is that if you want all of this stuff in life, if you want the big house, if you want the car, if you want the boat, if you want the lifestyle, if you want the 3, 4, 5, 6 kids, if you want you name it, whatever it is, you're gonna have to be responsible for it. If you want the major job or great business, you're gonna be responsible for it. You have to be responsible for it because nobody else will be. I mean, you want the big house. Well, you're responsible for raising the money for that. You're responsible for getting the mortgage on it. You're responsible for paying the mortgage on it. You're responsible for paying the taxes on it. And you're responsible for keeping it up. That's through keeping up insurance on it, making sure it's painted, making sure the roof is correct, that there's no tripping hazards, that you're not going to fall through the deck as you walk outside on it, that all the windows are correct and not cracked or allowing all kinds of cold or hot air in as you go along. You're responsible for that house, and then you're responsible for making sure that it's correctly locked up when you leave, even if it means you leave for a week, 2 weeks, a month, 6 months out, or longer. As you're doing it, you've got to make sure that you're responsible enough to keep it to where when you come back to it, it will be in the same condition that you left it, hopefully. That's the big house. If you want the great job, you're responsible for getting the job in the first place. You're responsible for getting there on a timely fashion every single day. You're responsible for making sure that you work your job in the specified hours that you've got. You're responsible for making sure that you've got the amount of work that is designated to you to do, and you've got to get it done in a certain period of time. You're responsible for making sure that all your ducks are in a row and that you leave on time. You're responsible for making sure that you get back home again in a timely fashion and go on from there. You're responsible. If you have children, you're responsible for those children. If you have a a vacation you want to go to, you're responsible for making sure that you've got all of your things packed and taken care of, and making sure that you've got everything that you absolutely need for when you go on to that trip. You see what I'm saying? You're responsible as an adult. Now, of course, as a child or a teenager, it's a different story. You don't have the same responsibilities. Your responsibility is basically this: show up and try to enjoy it. That's it. Plain and simple. But as an adult, it doesn't work that way. You always got something added onto it that only you can handle, only you can take care of. So I'm tired of adulting. That seems to be a growing trend recently. It's a scary thing. It's scary. I mean, think of it this way. If I decided that I didn't want my business anymore, I wasn't going to do anything, and I just threw it all away, the first thing that would happen would be I would have no money. The second thing that would happen would be that I would very quickly run out of whatever I happen to have in savings, which meant that I would have no food or gas to be able to go anywhere. The third thing that would happen would be I'd be running behind on my bills, which means very quickly I would be out of electricity or my phone and or the gas that I have to go ahead and heat my house and cook on. And then finally, I'd get kicked out of my house because I can't pay for it. Okay, and whether that's because I stopped paying the taxes on it to the government, or I stopped paying the mortgage people, the bank, to go ahead and that own the house, or I go ahead and I stop paying the rent for the owner that actually lives there, and he has to go ahead and evict me, and so on and so forth. That's it. But the trend that I keep hearing is I'm tired of adulting. I don't want to do it anymore. And basically what they're saying is I don't want to be responsible for this. I want somebody else to do it for me. I want somebody else to be able to just go ahead and tell me what to do and how to do it and let them take care of the hard parts while I just sit there and lounge around and do nothing else but be fed grapes all day long and have somebody above me peeling the skin off the grapes so I can go ahead and place it in my mouth and go from there. I mean, it's a pipe dream. It is literally a pipe dream. I would be smoking crack or something and really telling myself that if I could just lounge around all day long and have a wonderful time, that it would be perfect, that things are going on. But like I said earlier in the show, it would very quickly get boring. How do I know this? Because I've done it. I've done it. I mean, every time that I was on the ship and I had a break in between, I would have 6 weeks roughly to go ahead and go between my contracts. And that was so I could go ahead and recharge and do whatever I needed to do. Well, I'd go home, I'd lay down, I'd rest for about 2 days. I'd get up and I'd talk with my mom. We'd have a great time. We'd go out and do whatever we needed to go ahead and do for dinner, and I'd be just kind of just bumming and loafing and doing whatever, something like that. And by the third day, I am literally bored out of my mind. So I would have to go ahead and get up and do something. And then about week 5, I look at my finances and go, wait a minute, I've only got a few dollars left in my pocket. I'm glad that I've got to go back to work again next week because now I gotta make some more money so I can go ahead and save this. Owning your own business does exactly the same thing. But once again, you have to be the adult the whole time. You've got to make sure that you're responsible for everything that goes along with it. And once you've chosen to do that, you cannot stop doing it without the consequences. Once you get to being an adult, there is no stopping. You choose to do it or you choose not to do it, and you either reap the rewards or you accept the consequences. Now, there's a lot of gray middle ground in between those things, but it pretty much falls into those two categories while you're doing that. So, if you're tired of adulting, my best situation or suggestion to you is number one, assess your situation. Find out just how easy it would be to go ahead and stop adulting, or if you need to go ahead and start something new to grow it to the point where you can then sit back and say, okay, now I don't have to work as hard doing it. And in my opinion, that's probably the better suggestion right there anyway. You've been listening to Standing on the Edge. I'm going to give a shout out to my sponsors, DJR Entertainment, the CS Media Group, Hers Decadence, and HRS Foundations. We're ending a little early today, but that's okay. I want to remind you, this Saturday, Dave and I are going to be at the Salvation Army on Marietta Street in the ATL from 11 till 2, helping out Atlanta's homeless. There's an event going on right there. I'll be going ahead and playing the tunes, spinning the tunes. Dave's going to be helping me MC it. We'll be doing all kinds of other stuff while they're there, and they're going to have all kinds of great things happening. Show up, show your support, give donations to them. They would certainly appreciate that as well. Don't forget, my next show is going to be next Thursday, September 25th, also, as always, at noon. But until then, remember to expand your awareness. Think of something every day to help you on your own path, and hopefully soon, I'll see you on the edge. Have a great weekend.